I'm going to talk about people quite a lot about in here, but also startups inside bigger companies and outside of them. That it's something that I've been doing since the late 90s, and certainly not succeeding every time, although there has been some moments of success as well. Right now, I'm head of innovation and also head of IoT for Tieto. If you don't know Tieto as a company briefly, it's about 1.6 billion euros in revenue, 13,000 employees, quite globally spread. We have 2,000 people in India, in Pune, more than 2,000 in Czech. There are, I think, 3 offices in the US, some in Malaysia, Australia, very global in software for oil and gas industry, the energy industry, and also for the forest industry, how they benefit from the forest and make energy and other kind of fiber products, for example, for the forest. Tieto is a big part of that. And primarily software, but also things like cloud services, IoT things, analytics and data. So it's an interesting field where we see that the whole world is transforming to use technology more, and at least in certain sectors we seem to be a big part of it, along for the ride and inventing how to get more benefit out of it. We have also been running internal startups inside Tieto, but more about that a bit later. I'm also a board member in Kemppi, a welding machine company that has a factory in India as well, producing welding machines on the high end, these kind of complicated welding systems that, for example, automatically lock everything that a welder is doing and control quality. So it's interesting that something as boring and as stupid as a welding machine can also be these days full of technology and requires a connection to the wireless LAN and all sorts of RFID readers to be read from a ship hull to go through with the correct settings for welding. It's an interesting business, not doing so well at the moment globally, that welding machine sales are kind of declining, but this company is doing very well, defending its position, keeping the price level high up, and that's because it's selling much more than welding. It's selling the systems that control quality and control the whole process of welding. Also here locally, there's the oldest private TV company in Finland, is MTV, with a lot of TV channels, both in the digital channels and in the free-to-air channels, and I'm the board of directors of that. Media is certainly changing a lot these days, that it's not quite what it used to be with people watching Snapchat and using whatever YouTubers these days. And you would be amazed how old the average TV viewer in this country currently is. I'll reveal it to you. Its average age for TV viewing is currently around 57 years. So it's my average 57. So it's a lot older than you would assume. And of course, with that kind of a business, it is facing some serious challenges on how to keep it alive. What do you do in 20 years with a business like this? Your average viewer will be 77 in 20 years. So it's interesting to be a part of it and see how the world is changing. Coming to Slush, that I'm one of the people to blame for the event, that I'm a co-founder of the Startup Foundation that is the body behind Slush. And I've been to every Slush there ever has been since the first one in 2008, usually also speaking on stage about something. This year I'm doing one roundtable, but nothing more flashy than that. Slush is kind of a special event that has grown from an interesting set of circumstances where the Finns sort of locally here decided to declare that we're not Silicon Valley. It's slush outside. It's dark and cold and wet snow is raining to your face. We're not Silicon Valley, but we're different. We're doing the same kind of things. So welcome to the horrible darkness. And that was the declaration that Slush started with. And also in the first years, we were explicitly banning the politicians from entering. So I think for the first 3 years, we said that the Minister of the Economy is blacklisted, cannot attend the event. So as you can imagine, that got a lot of publicity in Finland, that they kind of received it well. But it's been a pleasure seeing how strongly Slush is doing and how much it's growing. And I always kind of feel a personal sting if somebody criticizes Slush in the public discussion. Of course, critic is welcome and invited to a certain extent, but also it seems to be that Finns are such a hyper-realistic culture that we often go criticizing things maybe a bit too much, and it's starting to bug me a little bit, which I think is a sensible reaction to it. But it's been a wild ride over the years with this. Tieto, the IT company that I work for as the head of innovation, has started some startups. So we have 3 ones with security, IoT, and customer experience management. So all sorts of user interfaces and customer experiences. And we all seem to be like roughly middle-aged men dressed in blue. But that's just a trick that we did. In fact, it's kind of a weird thing that Tieto, as an IT and software company, most of our leaders are women. So if you look at all of the leaders in the company, mostly they are women. It's an IT company with 13,000 employees, mostly led by women. I find it to be an interesting workplace because there's so many colleagues with different kind of backgrounds in there that you would never imagine meeting in IT. I think one of the people that I've been working with has a degree in tropical botanical sciences. And so how do you come up with these things? So everybody eventually finds their way into IT, I guess. Building up these startup companies inside a bigger corporation has been tough, and it hasn't been easy, that there are a lot of bureaucracy to deal with, and sometimes a lot of things like committing to funding, how bold you can be, how much risk you can take, and how much business planning is required really before you can act. So it's overcoming all of these obstacles as an entrepreneur inside a bigger company body. It's kind of a patient work that requires you to be quite diplomatic with your colleagues and coworkers, and luckily it has resulted in some degree of success that these startups, they actually get a lot done. They create new businesses, and the company benefits from it. Before I was employed by Tieto, I was doing startups on my own in the free market, and it's been a lot of things over the years. 16 rounds of venture funding and some exits. A lot of these exits, however, I must say, are the kind of exits where you sell a company for €1 just to get rid of it. And maybe half of them are the kind where people are happy, make some money, and I can take my wife to a nice dinner. So no problems with that, but it's not always roses and glory. I have my one bankruptcy that in fact, the first company that I started in the year 99, I managed to raise €5 million of risk capital at a valuation of €19 million pre-money valuation with just a team and an idea. And our idea back in 99 was that we are going to build this thing for the internet to become social. That someday the internet will be social and people will be chatting and sending each other files and playing games together. So that was the idea. The investors funded with a pre-money valuation of €19 million with just a team and just an idea. And of course, it all went to hell in a handbasket. That's 2 years later, the company bankrupted. The dot-com boom had burst, and it was really my fault as a young CEO that I didn't quite grasp how to build lasting culture in companies and how to really lead a team of engineers, for example. We had about 50 employees at the peak, and I was basically being this awful micromanager of a boss, going around and asking from the software guys, like, show me what you've done today, and trying to focus on the mistakes that are not working, and being this kind of a person that they want to hit to the face and just really not work for me. And so I learned a lot from that experience, that as a young man, I invested pretty much all that I had in the company and borrowed some more money from the bank to invest. And when the company went bankrupt, I ended up 100,000 and six, so €106,000 in the debt. As a young guy, 23 years old, no job, no income. And I had to pay that back. It took me a couple of years when I got my first exit, and I managed to pay back the loans that I owed to the bank at that point. But it taught me something about living with a really tight cost control Excel from day to day and calculating how much money you have for food. So it's not something that I'd like to do for decades, but a couple of years is enough for me, so hopefully that will be my only bankruptcy. Right now, as head of innovation, I'm looking into this stuff, so a lot of machine learning, AI, neural networks, data. So we are looking at different neural networks, what can be done with them. We use these things, deep convolutional graphic networks, for image recognition. This is the one that Google uses for fulfilling your search query, that when you type in what you try to search from Google and it's trying to guess what the thing is that you are searching for, it runs on a neural network like this one. And then there are a lot of Markov chain networks for industrial applications, and some of the later, cooler, more new applications of neural networks, like the neural Turing machines or extreme learning machines and stuff like that. So it's spending my days finding data scientists, finding people that know how to apply this stuff and coming up with creative ideas where to take this to. The benefit for working with Tieto is that they have about 1,500 relevant customers here in Northern Europe, and most of those customers are sitting on a big pile of data. So we can take their data, use that data to teach these neural networks, and hopefully get a lot of value out of it. So that's one of the processes that we are now actively running. If I think about how to succeed, and this is applicable both as an independent startup entrepreneur and also as a corporate entrepreneur, it really comes down to the same thing. These are some of the cases that failed. On the top of the list, Taika. This is my own first company that I established in '99 with a vision of creating basically social media at a time where nobody called it social media back then. We were clearly too early. We were too rigid, applying waterfall processes instead of lean processes. And also, I made a lot of mistakes as a young leader. The rest of the companies have been interesting failures as well. Apex fell for too much customer risk. Muslim, at its peak, was the largest social media in the world for Muslims. More than 10 million Muslim visitors each week coming to the site. And there, basically, we made a lot of failures with building up company culture. That we were kind of very unclear with the vision, not strong enough in culture of being real to our own achievements, so kind of bleeding from the edges, making too many mistakes and then hiding the mistakes, which is absolutely the worst. So Muslim ended up going belly up as well. And there are some really serious people failures with these things as well. These startups over here, that this one's interesting, that Health Puzzle was a startup that was constructing this software system for basically applied genetics. So it was a company that combined the health records of people with their genetic profile and made this calculation of a mashup from the data, predicting what kind of medication the people should eat, what kind of exercise they should have, and what kind of food, for example, could help their condition. And this company, it's the only time in my career that I've seen a very distinguished 60-year-old medical professor with 600 academic publications to get so mad that he throws a mug to the wall, face red, and starts slamming the table and shouting. And so full-on passion, full-on like physical violence almost in the boardroom. And it was mainly because we failed so much with the team in here that we ended up in a situation where we had at least 3 separate passionate visions on where to take the company, and none of these visions really agreed with each other. So we ended up fighting like hell, and in the end we decided to close shop. We had just raised money from an investor, taken in the round, and then the new investor joined us, and he saw all of this fighting, and we decided that it's not worth it. Let's not do this. And it's the only time in my career that we've actually paid the investment back to the investor. I've never seen that before, but it's an interesting process that you need to hire lawyers for it, and you need to reverse the round and pay back the money, and it's kind of a tough situation for the investor as well, because they've already made the decision. They've told their own partners that we have found this new company, we're investing, and all of a sudden it's not happening, the money is coming back, so it's a hard situation, horrible mess. But happens primarily because of people and failing culture. So what I'm saying here is that if you have the wrong people doing things with the wrong methods, focusing on the wrong things, and building up the wrong kind of culture, that's pretty much all you need to fail. You don't need much more than that for things to go to hell. If you flip this around and go to the cases that have had a measure of success, Magenta was my first exit in 2003. Sounds like a long ago, even to me. And then there's a bunch of others that have succeeded. One of the unicorn companies here in Finland that I've been a part of since the early days is the gaming company, kind of a Finnish, Danish, American company called Unity that builds Unity 3D, this gaming platform that most of the top games these days get built on. Unity just did a round this summer for $181 million with a valuation of close to $2 billion. So it's one of the cases where I've seen some degree of success, and it comes from really the team, the sharp focus, correct methods like applying lean methodology, and building a culture that helps you succeed. And it's certainly not a one-man show. You cannot do all of this alone as a leader, that you have to do it as a team and very consciously create this culture. Tremendous effort and requires talking about it often, bringing the group together, focusing on really what you want to build. I was also lucky to see the early versions of Supercell. What I didn't mention is that my first company, Taika, the one that bankrupted, we were working with this talented gaming guy who was actually based out of our office and programmed some games together with us for primarily media companies and telecom companies to use on their browser. And it was this nerdy guy called Ilkka Paananen who was programming these games in our company's living room. And then now he's the CEO of Supercell. And it was interesting to see how even back at that time he had this relationship to data and trying out things and proving them through data, validating that he's correct or validating that any design is correct. He didn't need to be correct himself. But it's this kind of approach that really sets the difference. That I met the Supercell team when there were less than 10 people, and we talked about this company DNA thing, that if you create a culture that focuses on these things rigorously, then that becomes your DNA, and you really need to maintain that and rebuild that every step of the way, and that's how you get eventually one of the best companies in the world in their own industry. It's not by mistake. It's a really conscious process of building this up. So yeah, wrong people, wrong methods, focusing on the wrong things with the wrong culture, big surprise what happens, and pretty much the opposite. The right people focusing on the right things, using the right methods, and rebuilding excellent culture time and time again. If we look at culture, humans have started from the infrared spectrum, that this has been our leadership model back in history. Do this thing that I tell you to do, or I bang you to the head with this club, I kill you. This is the first kind of manifestation of leadership that we've had in history. Quite quickly, humans learned that it's no good, and we moved on to this kind of a tribal society where we discovered that some elders have lived for a long time. Maybe it's a good idea to listen to them. And we started running a model where you can have tribes of possibly 200 people in size. The problem with this model is that once you get above 200 people, it doesn't really scale because you get new people who don't know who the elders are anymore, and it kind of breaks apart. So a big innovation happened when humans invented the kind of a king structure, that they decided that it's better if we divide labor. The king can have all sorts of lords and dukes and all sorts of lieutenants working for him, and together they can maintain dominion over a larger population, a larger patch of land. And they can organize together like a wolf pack. This model is still used today in times of war. Some chaotic areas use this, and also organized crime partially uses this. So that there's one capo di tutti capo, one head of the family that organizes through lieutenants. It's the same model. And it's been already hundreds of years since people learned to use the next model, which is this Amber model. So the point here is that now you are creating stable processes in your culture, that you have formal roles that you describe actually very well. And one of the top users of this one in history has been the Catholic Church. And they were able to maintain pretty much all of the known world in Europe under their influence by having this scalable model, that every significant place had a church, that church had a priest, and all of these places, they operated kind of the same way because the roles and responsibilities and descriptions of what you do were the same. So the big innovation was here to tell people what they do and tell them exactly how to do it. So they give precise instructions. It's like a massive bureaucracy in that way. This model still exists in public organizations mostly. But companies, for the most part, they've moved on to this orange model. So this is pretty much large corporate world for today. Having these well-oiled machines that play on budgeting, business planning, balanced scorecards, matrix organizations, these kind of things. And this model is at least 150 years old. And the problem here is that the processes become quite rigid. Something happens, something changes in the future, and you have a slow process that doesn't quite react to that immediately. The good thing is that you no longer tell people exactly how to do their job. You still tell them what to do because you are doing business planning, but not exactly how. So you get a measure of innovation, you get a measure of creativity injected into this model, but it's slow. The wheels of the machine are turning slowly. So many startups have adapted this kind of a model, a green culture. So this is more like a networked family, where you still have leaders and the heads of the family that represents the values and the culture and kind of the idols and icons of the culture they want to create, and you empower everybody to follow that as they best see fit in a kind of networked family. This is the first time when values and culture become more important than strategy, and it's all about empowerment and stakeholder thinking and these kind of things. Many startups are at least green by default. There are many, many examples of this. So many companies out there that use this kind of a model, but then some of them even use this teal model. That in the teal model, you have an organization where traditional leadership, traditional management is really dead. It no longer exists. All of the people are just coming together as individuals to form this living organism that fulfills a greater purpose. It gives maximum mandate to everybody, every one of its members, and no matter who you talk to from an organization like this, it's like talking to the CEO because they have such a powerful mandate to do everything they're capable of doing in this organization. And it's interesting to see what happens in the future, because now robotics and AI is coming to the table. I recently wrote a report for a think tank here in Finland explaining what happens to leadership organizations and companies in the age of AI and robotics. And my claim is that these guys, the Amber guys, they will be completely dead. Because if you can then tell people what to do exactly, that's instructions that you can feed to a robot, and the robots can take care of it. So there's no ability to compete here, complete dead. You cannot operate this kind of a way. And some public sector instances, they still might operate this kind of way. So that's something that they need to quickly learn away from. In the age of AI and robotics, also the orange organizations are in trouble, because now you have such a quick pace of executing things, of doing things, that the planning cycles here no longer serve you well. You will have a lot of trouble catching up, keeping up. There's always somebody faster than you, better than you, more creative than you, and they will have some ability to function, but a lot reduced capability to get anything sensible done. These guys will do quite well. They still have one huge risk, though. What if the head of the family or the many heads of the family, what if they're wrong? What if they choose the wrong culture, the wrong values, the wrong goals that we go towards? If they are wrong and they apply their creativity and their empowerment into the wrong goal, they're still dead in the water. So the only model that really maximizes benefits from AI and robotics is pretty much the teal model. Here you have a maximum mandate for every member to use technology as however they see fit towards the greater purpose that the organization exists for. And you get the most benefit out of this. So it will be super interesting to see in the age of advanced technology what happens with organizations and leadership, how many companies embrace this, change their ways before they find themselves to be one of these Amber guys who's lying dead with a robot on top of them on the floor. There are tools for this. So this is the culture map by Alexander Osterwalder. If you want innovation, if you want higher return on R&D, company designed for the future, you actually need to reward that kind of behavior. You need to make clear that people can choose innovation as their career path, and you can have you need to have a lot of enablers supporting this. If we look at the blockers, so this is the same thing on the yellow, but now instead of the green, we have the things that are hindering it. So if we are not holding innovation as prestigious, if we have the wrong incentives, if we are not agile enough, we require business plans, many of these things become impossible. So there are luckily tools that companies can use to design their future, and I think these will be absolutely necessary going forward. It's the only thing that will save them from competition and robots eating their brains. Thank you.